time I talk to y'all about Regular Show. Now, if you're a longtime watcher of the channel, you already know that this is one of my favorite series ever created. And if I'm being honest, it's a big reason as to why my channel started to take off when I started making this type of content. But you know, at some point I just had to step away. I just couldn't be known as the guy that just only talked about Regular Show. But every once in a while, I just always get drawn back in. It's like the Green Goblin mask. It just calls to me. I can hear the fandom, the voices of the park members saying, Corin, we need you, come back. And because this series is so popular, every time I do get back into it, there's always a new conversation going around in the fandom. Now, sometimes I agree with what people are saying, and other times I just think to myself, did we watch the same show? And recently, I've been having that exact same feeling when it comes to probably the most controversial character amongst Regular Show fans, Mordecai. Mordecai is an interesting character amongst Regular Show fans because if I'm being honest, majority of them just hate him. To this day, I think my biggest video is still a video where I talked about all the reasons why I don't like Mordecai as a character. But I've actually come to learn recently that when it comes to hating Mordecai, there's actually two types of fans. There are the fans like me that just don't like his character, don't like the way he moves, and just don't like him overall. And then there's also another type of fan that hates him for all the same reasons, but instead of blaming Mordecai, they actually blame other characters in the series for how Mordecai ends up. Basically, the idea that Mordecai was dealt a bad hand by certain characters in the show, and because of that bad hand, it made him a loser. Well, as a longtime fan, I'm here to tell you no, Mordecai has always been a loser, and he has no one to blame but himself. But before we get into that special public announcement, so a lot of times I'll get messages from you guys and emails saying things like, hey Corin, can you talk about this show? What are your thoughts on this show? Can you discuss this? And sometimes, depending on what it is, I can make a video on it, but sometimes I just can't. So I decided to start up a reaction channel. This way I'll be able to go over any videos, topics, or just any TV shows in general that y'all want to see me go over and give my live thoughts. The first two videos are up right now, and I'll link the channel in the description. So if you're interested, please consider checking it out, sending a reaction suggestion, or maybe even subscribing. But alright, enough with the self-promo. Let's get back into the video. Okay, so what made me want to make this video is that I was actually scrolling on TikTok and I came across this really interesting video where this girl was talking about how Regular Show fans perceive Margaret as a character. And in the video, she said something really interesting.
Not just people, but specifically male fans of Regular Show have this ire towards Margaret that causes them at random times to bring up how much they hate her and how much they think she ruined Mordecai's character.
Now, if I'm being honest, I don't know if this is something exclusive to only male Regular Show fans, but this is something that I have been seeing going on for a long time when it comes to when people talk about Mordecai's character. When people talk about how they feel about Mordecai, it typically goes that they like them in the beginning of the series, but as the series goes on season after season, they start to like him less and less. And many people go looking for the reason why they start liking Mordecai less and less, and many people have nailed it down to his relationship arcs. And because Margaret is such a key factor and Mordecai's longest running love interest, a lot of people just say that, hey, she's to blame and put all the blame on her. And look, don't get me wrong, in no way am I a Margaret fan. I feel like there are numerous reasons to not like Margaret. From her not being that interesting of a character, to her being a homewrecker, to her gaslighting CJ like she was actually insane. I swear, still to this day, CJ deserves so much better and should have never had to interact with any of these people. Yeah, there are many reasons to not like Margaret, but to say that she ruined Mordecai and to make it seem that simple is just so wrong. Because in reality, all Margaret ever did was expose Mordecai's flaws, the flaws that were baked into his character from the very beginning. One of the biggest criticisms that people had about Mordecai as the seasons would go on would be his indecisiveness and his ability to overthink everything. There were so many times where Mordecai could have got with Margaret in the earlier seasons, but every single time he had the chance to pull the trigger, he would overthink it or back out at the last second. And you know, we've all had the butterflies trying to act someone out before, so we couldn't really blame him the first or second time. But once it hit a certain point where it just kept happening over and over and over again, it hit a point with the audience where we were like, bro, why is this just being dragged out to this point? Is something genuinely wrong with Mordecai? And a lot of people looked at this as a character regression, but in reality, if you paid attention from the very beginning of the series, Mordecai was actually always like this. As much as people want to say he was a bad influence in the earlier seasons, Rigby was the choice maker out of the two. He might have gotten them into a lot of trouble, but Rigby was the one convincing Mordecai to take action, convincing him to do stuff. And although it's kind of subtle, you really notice it when you rewatch the series. Mordecai was always on the more indecisive side, so when you gave him standalone episodes that revolved around him and Margaret where he had to pull the trigger to ask her out, it made sense that he never could do it. I mean, quite literally, in the episode where Mordecai and Margaret got together, the only reason that they got together was because Rigby was constantly warning Mordecai over and over to take action before he gets put in the friend zone, to which Mordecai still couldn't do it and had to have a cosmic god give him a second chance and warn him that if he didn't take action right there in that moment, he would be stuck in a cosmic prison forever. And he wasn't just like this with Margaret like a lot of people think, he was also like this with CJ. Rigby literally called him out for basically dating CJ but not officially asking her out.
All you do is text CJ. Just tell her you like her and quit pulling a Mordecai.
What? That's not a thing.
I'm Mordecai. I never make a move, and I don't know what to do with my hands. You've been doing this for years.
Now, another thing a lot of people tend to criticize Mordecai about is that as the later seasons would come, it would seem like he would become a lot more selfish and immature. In a lot of episodes where Margaret was a factor, it would become very clear that Mordecai would lie, manipulate, and just seem very unlikable. One of my favorite examples of this is Dumped at the Altar, where Mordecai quite literally hijacks Muscle Man's wedding and makes it literally about him and how he needs to find his true love, which to this day I still never understood how Muscle Man and Starla, to be fair, never beat up Mordecai for this. A lot of people look at moments like this and say, well, Mordecai didn't act like this in the earlier seasons, and it's only in these Margaret episodes does he seem so bad, so it must be Margaret that's the problem. But in reality, this is just another situation where Mordecai was always like this from the beginning and people just didn't notice. All we have to do is look at how he treated Rigby in the earlier seasons. In the episode Death Punchies, it's shown that anytime Mordecai and Rigby disagree on something, Mordecai makes them play punchy so that he can get his way. He does of this is Dumped at the Altar, where Mordecai quite literally hijacks Muscle Man's wedding and makes it literally about him and how he needs to find his true love. So it's like Caffeine Concert Tickets, where Mordecai guilt trips Rigby to keep drinking coffee even though he's clearly burnt out. And he frames it in a way that Rigby would be a bad friend if he doesn't help Mordecai out in this, saying that they have to do it together. He does this because he knows he's physically stronger than Rigby and that Rigby will never be able to beat him. And on top of that, he also takes joy in beating up Rigby a little bit. There's so much of a chaotic force, and if I'm being honest, not very likable in the earlier seasons, that it was easy to look over. But when Mordecai showed the same tendencies of being a bad person in the later seasons, it's not that his character regressed or that he got worse, it just showed who he always was, which ultimately leads me to the main reason why I think so many people stopped liking Mordecai as the seasons went on. And that's because his character never really progressed in a significant way. Throughout the entire video, I've been comparing the later season Mordecai to his earlier version to show that standing around Rigby, a lot of Mordecai's bad aspects weren't highlighted or weren't that noticeable. But when you would give him episodes about himself, you would start to see how bad of a character Mordecai really was. Well, what made this even worse is that around the end of season 6 and throughout all of season 7, Rigby became way more likable than Mordecai as well. Rigby went on an entire self-improvement arc where he not only went back to high school to graduate, but he also strengthened his relationship with Eileen. He fixed his relationship with his father. Him and Benson got closer, and Benson taught Rigby how to actually be a man of his word and follow through with his goals. And we saw Rigby face adversity time after time again. He became a much more sympathetic, likable character, and honestly had the best character progression out of any character in the entire series. But while Rigby was getting all this character progression, Mordecai was doing nothing. He was essentially staying the exact same character. And because he was staying the exact same character, now when he came around Rigby, you could really see just how unlikable Mordecai was, because you could no longer hide his flaws behind Rigby's chaos or him being a bad person. In the beginning of regular show, Mordecai and Rigby were both losers, but Rigby was always more of a loser than Mordecai. But somewhere along the way, Rigby grew from being that loser, but Mordecai just didn't. For a majority of the series, he stayed the exact same character. I mean, he literally admits it himself in the episode Rigby's Graduation Day Special. Despite what many people may believe, nobody ruined Mordecai's character. Not Margaret, not Rigby, not any other character in the series, and his character never got worse. He is just a classic example of a character that never really grew, never really got any significant character development, and became unlikable by default because every other character in his series became so much more likable, which is honestly one of the very few things that I dislike about regular show, because I always wondered what Mordecai's character could have been if they didn't focus so much on the relationship aspects. For example, we know that Mordecai was an artist, he went to art school and dropped out, but at the end of the series, he went back to art school, graduated, and became an artist. That would have been so interesting to have arcs like that with Mordecai where we actually got to see him be an artist, or honestly anything else, because after about 5 seasons, I was so tired with seeing this guy deal with anything regarding relationships. But honestly, it feels so good talking about regular show again after such a long time, and best believe when that new series comes out, I will be covering every single episode. Once again, check out the reaction channel if you want to, would really appreciate the support. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you made it to the end of the video, and until then, it's been your boy Corin, and I'm off this.